Every zombie movie, every survival game, every apocalypse plan your friend sketched on a napkin at 2 a.m. starts in the exact same place, the supermarket. Grab the canned goods, block the doors, live like kings until this whole thing blows over. It's the most obvious survival plan in history. It's also wrong in ways that will genuinely surprise you. Let's start with the one everyone picks first, the supermarket sanctuary. If the dead ever start walking, roughly 90% of the population is sprinting to the nearest grocery store. And honestly, on paper, it makes perfect sense. You've got food, water, medical supplies, maybe even a pharmacy in the back. It's the all-in-one survival package. Barricade the entrances, grab a shopping cart, and ride this whole thing out between aisles 6 and 14. Here's the thing. That plan falls apart faster than you think, and it starts with the shelves themselves. Supermarket shelving is built for retail display. That's it. Those steel wood structure shelves you're picturing as your personal food vault can hold somewhere between 40 and 100 kilograms before they start to structurally compromise. That sounds like a lot until you realize you're now stacking survival supplies for multiple people across weeks or months. You'd blow past those limits in days. The shelves weren't designed to be load-bearing infrastructure. They were designed to hold cereal boxes at eye level, so you'd buy the expensive one. But let's say the shelves hold. The food won't. Commercially canned goods retain optimal quality for 2 to 5 years from the manufacture date. Home canned foods should be used within a year, definitely before 2. And that's under ideal storage conditions, which a barricaded supermarket with no climate control absolutely is not. Freezing temperatures change textures, cause rust, burst cans, and break seals that let bacteria waltz right in. Nearly 600 million people globally fall ill from contaminated food every single year under normal civilization conditions. Now remove health inspectors, refrigeration, and basic hygiene from the equation. Good luck. Then there's the rotation problem. Any food safety system worth anything relies on FIFO, first in, first out. You eat the oldest stock first, rotate the new stuff to the back. Simple in a functioning grocery store with employees and inventory software, completely impossible when you're barricaded inside, under siege, eating whatever you can reach in the dark because something is scratching at the loading dock door. Nobody is organizing expiration dates under those conditions. You're grabbing and hoping. So, your dream shelter has weak shelves, degrading food, zero climate control, and no realistic way to manage what you're eating before it poisons you. Which is, not ideal, but at least a supermarket only fails you slowly. The next shelter on this list can kill you all at once. The weaponized fortress. Let's talk about the single dumbest way to die in a zombie apocalypse, being killed by your own supplies. Every prepper fantasy involves the same thing. Walls of rifles, crates of ammunition, enough firepower to hold off a small army. And look, I get it. Guns are useful when the dead start walking. But here's the thing nobody thinks about. You haven't built a fortress. You've built a bomb. Modern ammunition lasts 10 to 20 years with proper storage. That sounds great until you realize proper storage means cool, dry conditions with minimal air exposure and almost zero temperature variance. Humidity is the #1 cause of ammunition degradation, particularly corrosion. So unless your post-apocalyptic fortress comes equipped with climate control, which it won't because the power grid collapsed 3 weeks ago, your stockpile is already on a countdown. But the storage problem isn't even the scary part. The scary part is fire. When ammunition is exposed to fire, it explodes. The larger the caliber, the more explosive potential. Casing fragments scatter in all directions like shrapnel. Now imagine that happening to not one round, but hundreds, thousands. An entire room full of carefully hoarded death tucked into every drawer, closet, and shelf of your survival bunker. One kitchen fire, one knocked over candle, one absolute moron trying to cook beans over an open flame indoors, and suddenly your fortress sounds like a war zone, except you're the only target. And it gets worse. Even after the fire's out and everything cools down, you're still not safe. The chemical makeup of heat-exposed ammunition changes permanently. Sergeant Jarrett Seal of the Tampa Police Bomb Squad has confirmed that cooled ammunition may still present a considerable hazard, with potential for uncontrolled explosions long after the initial threat. So you survive the fire, you breathe a sigh of relief, and then 3 hours later, a round in the back closet decides it's not done yet, which is, not ideal. Here's the part that really gets me, though. Firefighters performing suppression at real-world house fires have reported not even realizing that the crackling and snapping noises they were hearing were exploding bullets. because the ammunition was stored in drawers and closets where nobody expected it. Trained professionals couldn't identify the danger. But sure, you and your buddy Cornelius are going to manage it just fine in the apocalypse with zero emergency training and a bucket of water. The irony is genuinely beautiful. The more weapons you stockpile for protection, the more you've turned your shelter into an improvised explosive device. You wanted to be the most dangerous thing in the neighborhood, and congratulations, you are. Just not in the way you planned. But if you think accidentally blowing yourself up is bad, wait until you hear about the shelter that slowly drives you insane with nothing but sunshine and coconuts. The isolated island paradise. Everyone's had the same thought. Find a nice island, set up camp, watch the zombies rot on the mainland while you sip coconut water and wait for the whole thing to blow over. No bridges, no roads, no hordes, just you, the ocean, and sweet, sweet safety. Here's the thing. The ocean isn't protecting you. It's trapping you. Let's start with the basics. Water. You're surrounded by billions of gallons of it, and you can't drink a single drop. Desalination sounds like the obvious fix, but the entire European Union, with all its funding and engineering talent, currently operates 1,901 active desalination facilities that produce only 7.29 million cubic meters of fresh water per day. That's the output of an entire continent's worth of infrastructure. Your island has zero of it. Building a desalination plant from scratch isn't a weekend project. When Gaza faced a blockade and couldn't import water, experts determined that large-scale desalination construction was the only viable path to meeting basic water needs for the population. And that was with international aid on the table. You don't have international aid, you have seagulls. Then there's energy. Islands face some of the highest energy prices on the planet because they rely almost entirely on imported fuels. That diesel generator you brought, it runs until the fuel runs out, and then it becomes a very expensive paperweight. Solar panels and wind turbines require maintenance, replacement parts, and technical knowledge that most island castaways simply don't have. The isolation that keeps zombies away also keeps supply chains away. Every piece of equipment that breaks is a piece of equipment that stays broken. But let's say you're a genius. You solve the water problem, you rig up sustainable power, you've got a little garden going. You're alive. Congratulations. Now you get to experience the part nobody talks about. Your mind starts eating itself. Social isolation has documented harmful effects on mental health, worsening depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. And this isn't speculation. Systematic reviews covering 63 separate studies and over 50,000 participants found that loneliness is associated with mental health problems up to 9 years later. 9 years. That's not a bad week. That's a slow, grinding deterioration that you won't even notice until you're having full conversations with a volleyball you drew a face on. Except it's not funny when it's real. The damage isn't just psychological either. Isolation produces measurable adverse effects on cardiovascular, immune, and neuroendocrine systems. Your heart weakens, your immune system falters. Your body's stress response stays permanently elevated because humans are not designed to exist alone. We're social animals pretending we'd be fine as hermits. And the research says otherwise with zero ambiguity. So, the island paradise plays out like this. You survive the initial chaos. You solve the impossible logistics. And then, over months and years, the silence and the emptiness slowly dismantle everything that makes you a functioning person. Paradise becomes a prison with a really nice view. But if you think a slow psychological decline sounds bad, wait until you hear what happens when your shelter is literally see-through. The glass penthouse suite. Picture this. You're standing 50 stories above the street in a luxury penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows on every side. The city sprawls beneath you like a map, and you can see zombies coming from literally miles away. They can't climb. They can't reach you. You've got 360-degree visibility, elevation that makes you untouchable, and a view that would cost you $15 million before the world ended. Sounds perfect, right? Here's the thing. The exact feature that makes a penthouse attractive, the glass, is also the single weakest barrier you could possibly hide behind. And I'm not talking about zombies throwing rocks at it. I'm talking about the glass deciding to destroy itself for no reason while you sleep. Fully tempered glass, the stuff used in virtually every modern high-rise, contains internal tensile stress baked into its structure during manufacturing. That stress exists in a state of balance, compressed on the outside, tension on the inside. And sometimes, without any external impact whatsoever, that balance just fails. The industry calls it spontaneous fracture. The glass essentially self-destructs because the internal forces holding it together suddenly don't. No rock, no zombie, no storm. Just physics saying, actually, I changed my mind. So your impenetrable glass fortress can shatter while you're eating canned beans at 3 a.m., which is, not ideal. But let's say the glass doesn't spontaneously betray you. You've still got weather to deal with. Wind-related structural failures account for roughly 25% of all building damage claims, and glass takes the worst of it. Modern penthouses are basically designed to catch wind. Those beautiful large glass surfaces create massive pressure points where forces concentrate during storms. The higher you go, the worse it gets. Penthouse level is where wind loads are at their absolute peak, and it's not just the panels themselves. Sliding glass door systems fail when their tracks separate from frames or when rollers detach during high wind events. So your balcony door, the one you thought was sealed shut, just rips itself off the rail during a storm, and now you're exposed to the elements 50 stories up. Cool, add that to the list. Then there's wind-driven rain. Glass curtain walls on high-rises experience infiltration during severe weather, meaning water gets pushed straight through the seals and into your living space. Your shelter is now wet, cold, and compromised. Even minor debris, a piece of roofing tile, a chunk of signage, a branch, becomes a lethal projectile at hurricane-force speeds. Standard glass installations shatter on contact with objects that weigh less than a coffee mug traveling fast enough. So let me summarize your situation. You're living inside a shelter that can break itself for no reason, gets hammered by the strongest winds in the entire building, leaks when it rains hard enough, and shatters if a pigeon hits it at the wrong speed. But hey, the view is incredible. The real irony is that every zombie survival guide praises elevation and visibility. And they're right, those things matter. But wrapping yourself in glass to get them is like wearing a suit of armor made of candy. It looks defensive. It is not. But if you think fragile walls are bad, wait until you hear about a shelter that was literally designed to keep dangerous things locked inside. The Prison Multi-Complex. Every single person who has ever watched The Walking Dead has had the same thought. A prison would be perfect. Fences, walls, guard towers, individual cells you can lock from the inside. It's basically a ready-made fortress. And honestly, on the surface, it makes total sense. But here's the thing. Prisons aren't designed to keep things out. They're designed to keep people in. And that distinction changes everything. Think about it. Every single security feature in a correctional facility is oriented inward. The fences angle inward. The cameras point inward. The guard towers overlook the yard, not the surrounding landscape. The razor wire curls toward the interior. The entire architectural philosophy assumes the threat is already inside the building. When you flip that equation and the threat is pressing against the outside, you're standing in a structure that was never built to handle it, but the walls are thick and the fences are tall. Sure, let me explain why that doesn't matter as much as you think. Prisons are riddled with structural vulnerabilities nobody considers, because they were never meant to be defensive weak points. Ventilation shafts run through every cell block. Maintenance tunnels connect sections underground. Utility conduits for plumbing, electrical, and HVAC snake through walls and ceilings, creating dozens of unmonitored breach points. A zombie doesn't need to find the front gate. It just needs to find a gap. Then there's the perimeter security problem. Modern prison security relies on electronic monitoring, functional communications, and external law enforcement support. All three evaporate the moment society collapses. Those fancy sensor arrays along the fence line, paperweights, the automated lockdown protocols, they need power, servers, and someone on the other end of a radio. Without the broader system backing them up, prison security features are just expensive decorations. Now let's talk about what happens inside, because this is where it gets really ugly. Prisons are already overcrowded under normal circumstances. Pack survivors into a facility designed for containment, and you've created a petri dish. Overcrowding in confined spaces leads directly to increased infectious disease exposure as more occupants come into direct contact with each other. You don't even need a zombie bite to start losing people. A single case of dysentery rips through a packed cell block like wildfire. No hospital, no antibiotics. Just a concrete box full of sick people and zero options. And here's the part that should really bother you. OSHA regulations require at least 2 exit routes in any occupied building to permit prompt evacuation during emergencies. Prisons are specifically designed to violate this principle. The whole point is that you can't leave, which sounds great until something goes wrong inside. A fire, a structural collapse, a breach in one section. Suddenly you're trapped in a building with limited exits, surrounded by concrete walls purpose-built to make escape impossible. The thing protecting you from the outside is now trapping you on the inside. Rick Grimes made it look easy. It's not. A prison gives you the illusion of safety, while quietly stacking every possible disadvantage against long-term survival, which is, not ideal, but at least a prison has windows. Wait until you hear about the people who think burying themselves alive is a survival strategy. The underground concrete tomb. If there's one zombie shelter that everybody agrees on, it's the underground concrete bunker. Bury yourself deep enough, pour enough concrete, seal the hatch, and nothing's getting in. It's the gold standard, the default answer, the thing every single person pictures when you say zombie shelter, and it will absolutely kill you. Here's the thing about concrete that nobody wants to hear. Concrete does not last forever. It's typically believed to, but its actual lifespan doesn't usually exceed 100 years, and that's with proper maintenance. The kind of maintenance you're definitely not going to be performing while hiding from the undead. Precast concrete, the stuff specifically engineered for longevity, tops out at around 50 years of functional life. That's it. That's the ceiling for material that was purpose-built to endure. But my bunker is brand new, you say. I just poured it last year. Cool. And in 50 years, when you're still down there because the surface never got safe again, your ceiling is going to have a different opinion about how things are going. But you don't even need to wait 50 years for concrete to betray you. In April 2023, a multi-story concrete parking garage in New York City just collapsed. Not partially, not a crack here and there. The whole thing came down. The support columns had deteriorated to a fraction of their intended strength. Rusted steelwork, severely cracked brick piers. And here's the kicker. One of the failing support columns wasn't even a proper column. It was a repurposed chimney. Somebody looked at a chimney and said, yeah, that'll hold up a building. Which is, not ideal. That building had accumulated 64 reported building code violations between 1976 and 2023. 64. Over nearly 5 decades, inspectors kept flagging problems and the structure kept standing and everyone assumed it was fine because it hadn't fallen down yet, and then one day it just did. That's the thing about concrete deterioration. It doesn't send you a warning email. It doesn't gradually sag so you can notice and react. It goes from looks fine to everything is on the floor now with essentially zero transition period. Now, put yourself underground. You can't see the outside of your walls. You can't inspect the soil pressure. You can't check whether tree roots or shifting earth or water tables have been quietly grinding against your structure for years. You're sitting inside a concrete box trusting that it's still a box, with absolutely no way to verify that. And then there's the moisture problem. Bare concrete floors wick moisture upward constantly. It's what concrete does. Water moves through it like a slow, patient enemy that never stops. That moisture hits your metal storage containers and starts corroding them from below. Your canned food, your ammunition, your medical supplies, anything stored in metal is slowly being eaten by water you can't even see. You packed enough supplies to last 5 years, and the floor has been destroying them since month 1, so your walls are weakening on a timeline you can't observe, your ceiling is aging in ways you can't inspect, and your supplies are corroding from a direction you never thought to check. You're not in a shelter. You're in a tomb that just hasn't finished closing yet, but at least a concrete bunker gives you multiple ways out if things go wrong, right? Well, about that, the single-entry safe house. This is the one that genuinely makes me angry, because it sounds smart, it sounds tactical. One door, one choke point. Anything that wants to get in has to funnel through a single narrow opening where you and your buddies are waiting with whatever weapons you've managed to scrounge up. It's the most repeated piece of zombie shelter advice on the internet, and it is an engineering death sentence. Here's the thing. OSHA regulations explicitly require at least 2 exit routes in any occupied building to permit prompt evacuation during emergencies. That's not a suggestion. That's not a, hey, maybe think about it. That's federal law. Because decades of people dying in fires and structural collapses proved beyond any doubt that a single exit kills occupants. You've taken the most fundamental safety engineering principle ever established and thrown it in the garbage because a guy in a movie once said, we only need to watch one door, but the tactical fantasy gets worse when you add panic to the equation. Egress time through a single exit point doesn't increase linearly with each additional person. It increases exponentially. 10 people through one door is fine. 20 people through one door is slow. 30 people through one door during a genuine crisis is a crush event. And this is where it gets genuinely terrifying, because panicked crowds don't behave like individual humans making rational decisions. They behave like liquid. Maritime engineers call it the free surface effect. When water moves freely inside a ship's compartments, it surges toward whichever side is already tilting, which makes the tilt worse, which makes more water surge, which capsizes the vessel. Panicked humans do the exact same thing. Everyone surges toward the single exit simultaneously. The pressure builds at the bottleneck, and the crush dynamics mirror the liquid movement that flips ships upside down. You didn't build a fortress. You built the Titanic Titanic's flooding compartment, except everyone inside is the water. The 2021 Astroworld Festival Crowd Crush demonstrated exactly how this principle works when 10 people died in a single bottleneck scenario. When the crowd surged toward the stage, there weren't enough alternative routes for pressure relief, no redundancy, no secondary pathways to absorb the movement. One critical choke point became overwhelmed, and the failure was total. That's your single-entry safe house. One door gets blocked, compromised, or breached, and you have zero alternatives. The failure is total and instantaneous. And let's talk about what happens to your brain in that moment. Psychological research consistently shows that confinement in spaces with limited escape routes significantly increases anxiety and impairs decision-making during crises. So, not only have you eliminated your physical options, you've also degraded your cognitive ability to improvise new ones. You're trapped, you know you're trapped, and that knowledge makes you worse at solving the problem of being trapped, which is, not ideal. The easily defendable single-entrance concept trades a minor tactical advantage for a catastrophic vulnerability. You saved yourself the trouble of watching two doors. Congratulations. You also built a coffin with one lid that only opens from the outside. But if you think being trapped in a box with one exit is bad, wait until that box is floating in the middle of the ocean, the floating sea fortress. This is the one that kills me. Every single failure we've talked about in this video, the corrosion, the isolation, the single points of failure, the structural decay, all of it converges into one magnificent floating disaster. Because somebody out there genuinely believes the answer to the zombie apocalypse is a boat. Here's the thing about the ocean. It is actively, constantly, relentlessly trying to destroy everything you put on it. Salt water contains chloride ions that attack protective metal oxide layers on every exposed surface of your vessel. These ions increase water conductivity, which enables electrochemical reactions that accelerate rust formation and corrosion at a rate that would make your concrete tomb jealous. Offshore structures in the real world require annual inspections, with more intensive assessments on high-risk components below the waterline. That's with full industrial supply chains, specialized engineering teams, and billions of dollars in maintenance budgets. You're going to do that with Dave and a wrench. Cool, good luck. But corrosion is honestly the least of your problems. Let's talk about why your fortress is going to flip upside down. Ships capsize due to overloading, unfavorable weather, design flaws, human error, and hull damage? Sometimes all five at once. And the silent killer behind most capsizing events is something called the free surface effect. When water enters an internal compartment and can move freely, it reduces something called metacentric height, which is basically the measurement that determines whether your vessel stays upright or rolls over like a dog wanting a belly rub. The terrifying part is the math. The instability increases proportionally to the square of the water surface area inside that compartment. A small leak in one room doesn't create a small problem. It creates an exponentially growing catastrophe. One compromised seal, one cracked weld that nobody caught because your inspection team is two guys who used to work at a hardware store. That's all it takes. And then there's synchronous rolling. This occurs when your vessel's natural rolling period matches the frequency of incoming waves. When that happens, each wave adds energy to the roll instead of dampening it. The ship rocks further and further with every cycle until it reaches a point of no return. No amount of structural reinforcement prevents this. No amount of willpower prevents this. The ocean simply decides, today is the day, and your floating fortress becomes a submarine. Let me paint you a picture. It's 3 a.m. You're 40 miles from the nearest coastline. The hull breach you didn't know about has been letting water into compartment 6 for the last 4 hours. The free surface effect has already cut your metacentric height below critical thresholds. A wave set rolls in at exactly the wrong frequency. The ship tilts 15 degrees, then 25. Then the water inside shifts, and now it tilts 40. Everything that isn't bolted down, your supplies, your weapons, your people, slides across the deck. The ocean doesn't care about your zombie plan. That's the thesis of this entire video, really. The more elaborate the shelter concept, the more catastrophically it fails. Underground bunkers rot from the inside. Supermarkets expire. Islands starve you. Weapons stockpiles become liabilities. Glass shatters. Prisons trap you. Single entries become coffins. And floating fortresses sink. Every single one of these ideas sounds brilliant right up until you think about it for more than 10 minutes. The zombies were never the hard part. Physics was. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.